welcome back to Salem News Channel tonight, and I'm now joined by my guest, Carl Szabo. He is the Vice President and General Counsel for Net Choice. Carl, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and we can start off right away by saying I don't know what it is about your first name, but I absolutely love it. It is a name that is worthy of great admiration and respect. So I don't know who thought of that name, who gave it to you, your mom or your dad, but it's a great name, I have to say.
Right back at you.
All right, listen, let's get into the nitty gritty here. All right, so the DHS, this is a concern of mine. Carl, but the DHS has created this, or they did, this Disinformation Governance Board, and they appear to be at it again. The DHS is censoring colleges and universities. Let's talk about that with us, please.
Yeah, so this is a scheme. We've kind of seen the infiltration of our university. We're certainly seeing it every day in and day out on issues with regard to supporting Israel. But one of the other things that's going on is the efforts by our government to use our universities to seize control of speech online. And that's what this is. So what happened is back in 2020, the Department of Homeland Security decided to start issuing grants, to start creating institutions in universities to begin doing the type of content moderation, the type of censorship that was revealed in the Twitter files and in the Facebook files. So what we are seeing is, in Stanford in particular, it was discovered and revealed that the Department of Homeland Security created this institution. It's called the Election Integrity Project. So, clearly not going to be good for conservatives, Democrats, or free speech. Election Integrity Project. And its job was to then go to social media platforms and point out content that was deemed to be, quote unquote, disinformation or misinformation. The Election Integrity Project was then staffed by people who also had jobs at the Department of Homeland Security. But because it was Stanford University and not the government, it was trying to do an end run around the First Amendment. So the First Amendment, as we are seeing in court and in the court cases brought by the state's attorney general from Missouri and Louisiana and several others against the Biden administration, is that the Biden administration can't go out there and pressure social media platforms to remove content that it doesn't like. And it can't pressure social media platforms to promote content that it does like. That's a violation of the First Amendment. That's a violation of free speech. So the DHS thought, aha, what if we have somebody else do it for us? And they went to Stanford, they gave them a bunch of money to do it, and that is the end run that we are seeing as an effort to end run the First Amendment and control speech online.
Typically when you hear of the Department of Homeland Security, you don't think of censorship. Perhaps you think about, initially it began a fight back against Islamic terrorism, and you may think of the borders, but you don't think about censorship. But through the Department of Homeland Security, once again, we had this Mary Poppins type lady. I forget her name, but the what was it called? The Disinformation Governance Board. At
That's
some
exactly
point in time,
right, yeah.
Oh, so that broke down. Let me ask you this, Carl, because I'm getting so frustrated with this stuff. We do have some Republicans that happen to have power. They do control the power of the purse. Are you hearing anything as far as maybe defunding these organizations or these bureaucracies, or at least cutting down the size and scope of these bureaucracies? Because frankly, I believe they need to be abolished. To me, it seems like they have gotten too big, too bloated, and they are circumventing the will of the people. Are you hearing anything on this from the right?
So I'm hearing a lot from people on the right. Unfortunately, sometimes the anger is mismanaged. They're like, oh, I'm angry at Twitter for taking down content. Well, it turns out Twitter was getting incredible amounts of pressure from the Biden administration. That's what we learned from the Twitter files, where they were just getting constant pressure saying, you got to block this information. You got to take it down. And so this is the Department of Homeland Security, which, as you point out, was actually created after 9/11 to kind of keep us safe from the next 9/11. Well, now they've gone way too far. Now they are going out and saying parents are terrorists, or conservative speech is disinformation and therefore threatening. And there is some good news. What we are hearing on the Hill is that we had passed out of the House something called the Protecting Free Speech from Government Interference Act, passed out of the House strictly along party lines, which is a real shame, because what the bill did was it said if you are a government employee, you can't use your government position for political purposes. That makes sense, right? at the end of the day, we want the government working for all people, not a political party. And unfortunately, very few, if any, Democrats actually support that notion. It's now sitting in the Senate. It should be taken up. It should be passed, because what it also does is it then holds those employees directly responsible. Too often you hear of people, bad apples at agencies. And at the end of the day, it's the agency that gets blamed. But these actually go directly after the employees by holding their pensions and their paychecks voided if they violate the law. And so this is something that everyone should support, and we should get it passed. At the same time, we are seeing Congress and the House start cutting the budgets of these rogue, out-of-control agencies. One that just happened this week is the Federal Trade Commission is looking to see their budget significantly cut. This is an agency that controls and oversees every single business in the country, so they are in the perfect position to pressure businesses if they say or do the wrong thing that Biden doesn't like. So hopefully Congress is waking up, because our budget is way out of control, and we certainly shouldn't be funding these rogue agencies that are doing end runs around the First Amendment to control speech online.
Now, do we see an appetite, or do you see, and again, I'm speaking to Carl Szabo, he's the Vice President and General Counsel for Net Choice. Do you see an appetite from legislators to perhaps? I believe, Carl, that we need to stop funding these major institutions, these colleges and universities. Frankly, I think the Obama administration, they fundamentally transform America. I think he was one of the most successful presidents in this sense, and that he did fundamentally transform America. He laid the groundwork. I think Joe Biden is following up on that. I do believe, to some extent, this is just me speaking, that this is Barack Obama's third term. But one of the things that they did is, you used to be able to go out and get grants and all these loans from private entities as well, but now it's the federal government, and you have places like Stanford that get what was it, $500 million worth of federal grants. So you have these institutions that are going to be compelled to do whatever it is that the Biden administration wants, because they're on the dole.
Yeah, exactly. When you become dependent on somebody, then, the old adage, he who pays the piper calls the tunes. And that's exactly what you're seeing out of these universities. You point out Stanford gets $500 million in federal grants. That's taxpayer money. That's your money. That's my money. That's our kids' money.
Is that
just
annually?
To do research. Yeah.
Is this annual?
It's annually. And so part of the thing is, and this is something that's really concerning, let's presume that Stanford makes some amazing discovery with those federal grants.
Sure.
They make some medical breakthrough. They make some scientific breakthrough. More often than not, they get to reap all the funding rewards from whatever patents get used, whatever research gets used. American taxpayers don't get a nickel back. More often than not, that's how these grants are written. They are just handouts of money. And when you hand out money, when you make people dependent on you financially, then once again, he who pays the piper calls the tune. And here the government can turn to Stanford and say, we need you to create this election integrity partnership. And they have to do it because they got $500 million on the line. And that's part of the problem. We need to start taking control of where this money is coming from. I fully support, if the private sector wants to fund it, have at it. But these universities get tons of money. They get tons of grants. And we need to be better stewards with our money. And in doing so, we can also make sure that what happens on campus is what's best for the students of that campus, not for the people in Washington, the people in the White House.
Okay, we have just about 30 seconds left here, Carl. If you were to wave a magic wand, what does the Republican House need to do to begin to fight against this and remedy this problem? What are the best solutions out there now?
Yeah, this is super important because we got the election coming up in 2024. We got Chuck Schumer saying we got to seize control of AI. What they need to do is push the Protecting Free Speech from Government Interference Act in the Senate, and they need to start just cutting all the funding to any agency that is engaged in censoring speech online. Finally, the courts are also a solution. We're going to have restitution, hopefully, from the state of Missouri and Louisiana against the Biden administration in their lawsuit.
Okay. Carl Szabo, again, he is the Vice President and General Counsel for Net Choice. Carl, thank you so much for joining us today on Salem News Channel tonight. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks.